Legend says that en passant checkmate is the rarest thing that could happen in a game of chess. Most people live their entire lives without experiencing this unique feeling. But today that's going to change, because I'm going to teach you how you can force an en passant checkmate onto your opponent. This is the very first time I've ever gotten an en passant checkmate. Only after the game ended did I realize what I've just done. It probably took me over 100,000 games to get this one. However, I'm going to teach you how you can speed up the process. So what needs to happen for you to be able to force this checkmate? The hardest part may actually be to not have your opponent resign. And if Gotham Chess and Eric Rosen taught people well, they will not resign, and you can follow the series of steps. Alright, then you need your opponent to have a pawn that has not yet moved, and this cannot be a rook pawn. A rook starts the game on the edge of the board on these files, and if your opponent's pawn is on one of these files, you will not be able to force this checkmate. However, you can force it with any other pawn, and in this case we're going to be looking at the knight pawn. Next, you need to have a pawn ready to capture your opponent's pawn en passant whenever it will move 2 squares. Next, you need to have 2 queens, or other material imbalances are okay, but I think 2 queens is the easiest. One of your queens is blocking the pawn so that it cannot move before you need it to, and the other queen is controlling some of these squares and possibly escorting the king into this position where it is stuck on the back rank and ready for you to complete your maneuver. And the pattern will be that your king is 1, 2, 3 squares to the left of your queen that's blocking this pawn. Now if this pawn was on the other side of the board, reflected, the same pattern will be reversed. And you always want to have this pattern on the opposite side of where the pawn is blockaded, because that's where you'll have more space. So the pattern is 1, 2, 3 with your king, and then 2 diagonally, and then you'll have your queen. And why is this very important? It's because this queen over here is stopping black's king from escaping on these blue squares, and this queen is actually ready to give this important check, as you'll see. So the final pattern is this. Your queen unblocks the pawn and gives a check. Because your queen is blocking his escape, black's king is forced to go here. And finally, your queen can swing over onto this diagonal to give a check. Black's king cannot move anywhere, so the pawn is forced to go up 2 squares. And finally, en passant checkmate. So those are the final moves for this pattern, and this is the pattern of pieces that you'll need to be able to have. Okay, now let's take a look at how you can force the king into this position so that you can complete this pattern. Alright, let's say the king is into this awkward position, and you'll have to force him on a journey along the edge of the board into the correct squares. However, you'll notice that this queen that's blocking the pawn is actually controlling a lot of the board, but that's okay, because we can put our king onto one of these red squares and it will block our queen, so that black's king has this open path. And while we're doing this maneuver, it's very important that you always look ahead 1 move and make sure your opponent's king has at least 1 open square that he can go to. Otherwise, you risk stalemate, as you'll see. Okay, we brought our king in, we bring our other queen. We just have to control squares for black's king to escape. And then we can start this pattern where the queen cuts off the king and cuts off this square, so black's king's forced to go this way. So our queen is controlling this square, forcing the king to go up. Now if we go here, if we continue this pattern again, you'll notice that it's actually stalemate because our queen controls this square. So we use our king to block our queen so that black's king can actually move through it. And once black's king is in the corner, we can give this close-up check with our queen on the edge. And after black's king moves here, you'll notice that our queen controls these squares, and black's king will be forced to move onto this square next move, so we just let him. And then we can give a check, force him onto the edge of the board, and then we can escort his king up using our queen. Now we gotta watch out. This queen is controlling that square, so we have to block it with our king. And then we use our queen to keep pushing the king up the board. He's in the corner, we give the check on the edge. And now black's king will be forced to go to this square next move, so we gotta open it up for him. Then we push him on the edge, and he's basically into position. And we just need to bring our pieces in. And we bring our king in, and notice that the tempos will work out better if you step your king on the file that's not the same as his king, so the different file. If not, you can always triangulate if you forget the tempos. You can triangulate by moving your king back, waiting one move, and then moving to the same square. And then we give a check, and now our queen is onto this file, which is important to stop his king from escaping. Now all we need to do is actually waste a move, because black's king will be forced to go to this square. And now we bring our queen into the perfect placement to swing over to give a check. And also you'll notice that we put our queen on a dark square when his king is on a dark square, so the colors match when we move our queen to the key spot. And this will work out well with the tempos, because now our queen can unblock, and then our queen can swing over. Okay, that's the pattern. That's how you can force the king into that situation. Okay, let's take a look at another possibility where black's king is behind the pawn trying to hide. In this case, we can force him out by lining up our queens and actually giving a check over here. And the very next move, we just block the pawn once again with our queen, and we just push the king out using our free queen. Our queens are making a little box for the king to stay in. Bring our king. We play this move to push black's king to the edge, and you'll notice that we need to have enough space for the king to be able to move freely, so it's not stalemate. We move our king onto the different file from his king, just so the tempos work out nicely. Check, waste a move, dark square, so we can move to the key dark square. And then the tempos work out nicely. We give a check, swing the queen, and checkmates. All right, now let's take a look at the bishop pattern. So this is a bishop pawn, and in this case it's a little bit different because our queen doesn't have enough space. We would have to go on the edge of the board so that black's king has these squares to move into. But there is another pattern that we can use here. We can put our queen on this diagonal that this other queen doesn't control, and in this way black's king is stuck in this orange rectangle. This gives us all the time in the world we need to bring our own king, and then we can use this queen to further squeeze and take out squares from the black king, force them on the edge, bring our king in, 1, 2, 3 away. We need to waste one move because this is the key square and it's a light square, so we need to move on the light square when black's king is on the light square, just so the tempos work out. So any move controlling the escape squares for the king will be okay. And now we can move on to the key square, give a check, then swing the queen, and en passant checkmate. All right, let's take a look at one way you can force the king into that position with a bishop pawn. You can use your queen to cut off some squares for the black king. Also, your king is blocking the queen from controlling the escape path. Then you use your queen to squeeze the king where you want him. And then you just have to make sure that black's king always has a square available so that it's not stalemate. In this case, we can use our king to block the diagonal, give that check, and then give him enough space so that he can run away. Now once again, we gotta visualize that black's king has enough squares to move to. We block this queen with our king. We squeeze the king up, give the check once the king is in the corner. And then next move will have to be this one, so we just have to open it up for him. And since it's a bishop pawn, we put our queen onto this diagonal that the other queen doesn't control. So the black's king is stuck into those orange squares. Then we use our queen to squeeze or take away some of these squares so that black's king has to move backwards. Then our king is in position. 1, 2, 3. We need to waste the move. Then our queen is in position. Light square. 1, 2 away from the king. And then this is the perfect position for the pattern. All right, now finally, let's take a look at the center pawn. And also notice that we want the king in the, basically the quadrant that's away from the one where the pawn is. So this pawn is in this half of the board. We want the king as far in the other half of the board because that's where we have more space to work with. Over here it might be a little bit crowded on space. And with the center pawn, it's actually the easiest because you can just keep the king on the back rank. You bring your own king. Your king is in position. 1, 2, 3 away from the queen that's blocking the pawn. And you'll notice that in this case, we don't need this other queen to control any squares over here because it's the edge of the board. So it makes it much easier. All we need to do is use our other queen to just attack the key square. Could have been from here, could be from over here, just to attack that key square or even key diagonal. And then we can give this check, give the other key check, and then force the en passant checkmate. Okay, finally, let's take a look at an example of how you can force the king into position with the center pawn. In this case, the center pawn is on the other side of the board, so we need to bring his king into this open space over here. We have our king squeezed into those squares, so it's going to be very easy to visualize our pieces. Now black's king is squeezed into those. And we just needed to get into this position so that we can force black's king to go this way. Our king blocks the queen, so that after this check, black's king can go on its journey. We give this check. Black's king has to go up next move, so we just let it. Use our king to shield his king. Now, of course, we gotta watch out for stalemates. We gotta make sure black's king always has a move. And in this case, the tempo isn't quite right for the queen, so we can use this little trick, just swing over to the other side, and then swing back down. And now the tempo is perfect for black's king. And now we just have to get our king into position. This is the blocking queen. 1, 2, 3 over here. Also blocking our queen. And since it's the center pawn, we don't need this queen to control any squares over here. We just need it to attack this key square or even key diagonal. So we just go, say, over there. And now we can freely give this check with our queen, the other check, and en passant checkmates. All right, that's the basic pattern of how you can force this checkmate. Alright, now finally I'm going to show you an example of a full game where I will force en passant checkmate. So let's say Stockfish level 3. I'm just going to start off by trying to win all their pieces and then block one of the center pawns so that it cannot move. So I'm just going to try to play solid moves. Just make sure I don't lose anything and wait for him to make a blunder. Just make sure all my pieces are protected. Okay. Alright, now I kind of want to do some sort of attack. And if I get a sort of checkmating attack on his king, it would be a good sign because they'll probably sacrifice all their pieces trying to defend. So I can try maybe this, I can try knight here, bishop here. A lot of good options, but none of them quite seem to work. So I'm gonna try to open up the position. If he goes here, I'll play g6 and then attack that pawn. Okay, I'm just gonna take it and keep bringing my pieces into attack. Okay, I can take with the rook, but I can take with a queen too. I mean, not queen, but I can bring my queen in. Let's just take with the knight. I kind of want to find a way to swing my queen over. I guess I'll just discover check and win all the material. Maybe bring my bishop in. Alright, beautiful. We get all the material. We just gotta make sure that one of these pawns stays blocked. I just have to clear up all the pieces somehow. Maybe I can take this knight. Okay, it's a little bit tricky, but I think I might be able to block one of those pawns. Let's see, and actually I'm going to take the rook first. It's not checkmate, and then I'm going to block this pawn. Now we have a bishop pawn situation. Now I'll just take this. It's not stalemate. Not quite stalemate. Now I don't want to take this because that will be stalemate, so let's see here. I just need to promote another queen because my pattern needed 2 queens. Okay, this is not stalemates. This will not be stalemates either. And I just realized that I actually need a pawn to be on one of these files so that I can force en passant checkmate, and that'll just be easy. I'll just recapture this pawn actually. If he doesn't want to take my rook, I'll probably try to force him by stalemating him. Okay, let's get our pawn into position. Let's just sack our rook. And let's just bring our king in. And since this is a bishop pawn, I might as well get my queen onto this diagonal that's not controlled by this queen. So I'm just going to put it over here. And also I noticed that this pawn is getting in the way, so I'm just gonna try to give that up real quick. Alright, now our queen is in position. We just bring our king to the key square. Okay, if you would have gone here, I would have played this move to force him back, but our king is on the key square. And we just need to triangulate because we want to give this check. So I'm just going to play a couple moves here, and then his king is on the dark square. My queen will be on the dark square now. And now I can give this check. I can swing my queen over, force the pawn, and en passant checkmate. And there you have it. This is also my first try of the practice game, so I didn't need any other attempts. I hope you enjoyed this video, and good luck on getting this rarest checkmate in chess.